Chosen one, God is giving you one last warning. This is serious. When you hear language like one last warning, it can sound frightening or dramatic, but what truly matters is the deeper meaning behind it. In life, there are moments when awareness becomes unavoidable. Patterns repeat. Signals become clearer, and consequences begin to feel closer. This is not about fear. It is about attention. It is about recognizing that certain behaviors, decisions, or delays can only be ignored for so long before they begin shaping outcomes in ways that are harder to reverse. A warning, in this sense, is not punishment. It is an opportunity to change direction, while change is still easier to make. Stay with this message until the very end, because clarity grows as each layer unfolds. And write your warmest wishes in the comments and include the number 144 as a symbol of focused intention, awareness, and positive alignment. This is the only place where wishes are mentioned, because from this point forward, the focus remains entirely on responsibility, awareness, and the choices that shape what comes next. Now, Chosen One, press the hype button, like this video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel, and let's start. Sometimes what feels like a warning is simply the moment when you finally see a pattern clearly. You notice that certain habits are not leading where you hoped. You recognize that postponing decisions is also a decision. You become aware that comfort has started to replace growth. This realization can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort often signals that change is necessary. Another form of warning appears when opportunities keep arriving but are not acted on. You may find yourself repeatedly offered chances to improve, learn, heal, or advance, yet hesitation, doubt, or distraction keeps delaying action. Over time, missed opportunities create a sense of stagnation. The warning is not that opportunity will disappear forever, but that growth becomes harder when momentum is not built. Sometimes the warning comes through emotional signals. Increased stress, fatigue, or dissatisfaction can indicate that something in your current way of living is not sustainable. These signals are not weakness. They are feedback. They are your system asking for adjustment before breakdown occurs. A serious warning can also appear when relationships begin to strain. Miscommunication, unresolved conflict, or emotional distance may suggest that certain behaviors or priorities need re-examination. Relationships reflect inner patterns, and when those patterns are ignored, tension often increases. Another form of warning is a sense of restlessness that does not go away. You may feel that you are meant to grow, to change, or to step into something different. Yet fear or uncertainty keeps you in familiar routines. This inner tension is not random. It often points to misalignment between your current actions and your deeper goals. Warnings also show up when you compromise values for convenience. Small compromises may seem harmless, but repeated over time they reshape identity and direction. The warning is not about being perfect, but about staying honest with yourself about what matters to you. Sometimes the warning is financial. Patterns of spending, avoiding planning, or delaying responsibility can quietly build pressure. Early awareness allows for adjustment before stress becomes overwhelming. Financial strain rarely appears suddenly. It usually grows gradually when ignored. Another warning sign is declining discipline. When routines that once supported you begin to slip, productivity and confidence often follow. Discipline is not about control, but about creating structure that protects progress. Warnings can also appear as repeated lessons. When similar problems keep returning in different forms, it often means the underlying cause has not been addressed. The situation may change, but the pattern remains until awareness and behavior change. Sometimes the warning is a loss of motivation. You may feel disconnected from goals that once excited you. This disconnection can signal that your direction needs reassessment or that burnout requires attention before continuing forward. Another form of warning is increased comparison. When you constantly measure yourself against others, it may indicate insecurity or dissatisfaction with your own progress. Comparison distracts from personal development and can erode confidence if left unchecked. Warnings can also be subtle. A sense that time is passing faster. A feeling that you are postponing things you know matter. A quiet awareness that something needs to shift. These signals are easy to ignore, but they rarely disappear on their own. Sometimes the warning is simply exhaustion from carrying responsibilities without balance. When rest is consistently postponed, performance and emotional health suffer. The warning is not to stop striving, but to adjust how you sustain effort. Another warning sign is avoidance. Avoiding conversations, decisions, or tasks may provide short-term relief but creates long-term pressure. Avoidance delays growth and increases future difficulty. Warnings may also come as reduced joy in daily life. When routines feel empty or mechanical, it can mean that meaning needs to be reintroduced through goals, creativity, or connection. Another form of warning is decreased tolerance for growth challenges. When discomfort feels unbearable rather than manageable, it may indicate that emotional resilience needs strengthening before progress can continue. Sometimes the warning is external feedback. People may express concern, suggest changes, or point out patterns you have not noticed. While not all feedback is accurate, repeated feedback deserves reflection. Warnings can also appear when priorities become unclear. When everything feels equally urgent, focus is often lacking. This scattered attention reduces effectiveness and increases stress. Another warning is the sense that you are capable of more but not acting on it. Untapped potential creates internal conflict that can eventually lead to frustration or regret. Warnings are not about condemnation. They are about course correction. They are reminders that direction can still be changed through awareness and action. A serious warning does not mean disaster is guaranteed. It means that attention is needed now, not later. It means that waiting may carry greater cost than acting. Sometimes the warning is about health. Ignoring physical signals, poor sleep, or chronic stress can lead to long-term issues if not addressed early. Another warning is emotional numbness. When feelings become muted, it may indicate disengagement or suppression that needs gentle attention and support. Warnings can also be about self-respect. Accepting treatment or conditions that undermine dignity often leads to deeper dissatisfaction over time. Another warning is when learning stops. When curiosity fades and growth stalls, stagnation often follows. Sometimes the warning is about honesty. Avoiding truth with yourself may feel easier, but it delays necessary change. Warnings can also be about balance. Overworking, overgiving, or overcommitting without recovery leads to depletion. Another warning is when you repeatedly promise change but do not follow through. This pattern weakens trust in yourself and reduces confidence. Warnings are often quiet before they become loud. Early awareness gives more options and easier solutions. A warning can also mean that you are close to an important turning point. Pressure often increases before significant change. Sometimes the warning is simply that you are outgrowing your current environment, habits, or expectations. Warnings do not demand perfection. They ask for honesty, reflection, and small but consistent steps in a better direction. Ignoring warnings does not stop consequences, but responding to them can soften or redirect outcomes. Sometimes the warning is about alignment. When actions no longer reflect values, discomfort increases until correction occurs. Warnings can also be invitations to mature emotionally. financially, and mentally. Another warning is when comfort becomes the main goal instead of growth. Warnings can be opportunities disguised as tension. Sometimes the warning is about time, recognizing that certain windows for change are easier now than later. Warnings can guide you toward responsibility rather than fear. Another warning is when intuition repeatedly points to the same needed change. Warnings can also appear when excuses begin replacing effort. Sometimes the warning is that something needs to end for something better to begin. Warnings do not remove freedom. They highlight it. They remind you that choices still matter and direction is still adjustable. As this first part settles, understand this clearly. What is being called a serious warning is not meant to scare you, but to wake you. It is about awareness of patterns, priorities, and behaviors that shape your future more than any single event ever could. You are not being told that something bad must happen. You are being reminded that something better is possible if you are willing to recognize what needs to change and take responsibility for that change now, while the path forward is still open and flexible. This moment is not about judgment. It is about opportunity, awareness, and the power you still have to choose your direction. As this awareness settles in, you may begin to recognize that the most serious warnings are rarely about a single mistake. They are about repeated delays, familiar excuses, and patterns that quietly shape outcomes over time. Change does not usually fail because of one bad decision. It fails because of many small decisions that feel harmless in the moment, but slowly pull you away from the direction you truly want to go. You may start noticing where you tend to postpone action. Tasks you keep saying you will handle later. Conversations you avoid because they feel uncomfortable. Goals you talk about but never fully commit to. These delays are not always caused by laziness. Often they come from fear of failure, fear of success, or fear of leaving what feels familiar. But regardless of the reason, delay still has consequences. Another important realization is that growth requires discomfort before it brings relief. Many people wait until they feel ready, confident, or certain before making changes. But readiness is often built through action, not before it. The warning, in this sense, is that waiting for perfect confidence may keep you waiting indefinitely. You may also recognize that some habits are no longer supporting your future. Habits around time use, sleep, focus, spending, or emotional coping can quietly limit your capacity. These habits may have helped you survive earlier phases of life, but survival habits are not always suitable for building stability and long-term success. As awareness increases, you may notice moments where you distract yourself instead of addressing what matters. Endless scrolling, constant entertainment, or busy work can become ways to avoid facing decisions that require courage. These distractions are not harmful in moderation, but when they replace purposeful action, they delay growth. Another shift is recognizing how often you underestimate your own ability to handle change. You may assume that adjustments will be too stressful or too complicated, but in reality, many people adapt faster than they expect once they begin. The warning is not that change is dangerous, but that avoiding it can keep you stuck in discomfort that slowly becomes normal. You may also start seeing where you compromise your own standards to maintain comfort or avoid conflict. Saying yes when you mean no. Staying quiet when something matters to you. Accepting conditions that do not align with your values. Over time, these compromises erode self-respect and clarity. Another serious sign is when you begin settling for situations that drain you emotionally or mentally. You may convince yourself that this is just how life is, but deep down you sense that something better is possible if you are willing to take steps toward it. You may also notice that your inner dialogue becomes critical when you delay action. Guilt, frustration, and self-doubt can increase when you know you are not following through. This emotional weight makes change feel even harder, creating a cycle that keeps you stuck. As you reflect, you may realize that many opportunities require preparation before they arrive. Skills, habits, and stability built now determine what you can handle later. The warning is that waiting for opportunity without preparing for it often leads to missed chances or overwhelming pressure. Another important awareness is that not choosing is still choosing. Staying in the same situation is a decision, even if it does not feel active. Over time, this passive choice shapes your life just as much as any bold move would. You may also recognize that fear often disguises itself as logic. Thoughts like, "This isn't the right time," "I need more information," or "I should wait until things calm down," can be reasonable in some situations, but repeated constantly, they become barriers to progress. Another serious moment of reflection comes when you notice how quickly time passes. Weeks turn into months, and plans remain unchanged. This realization can feel uncomfortable, but it also brings urgency that can motivate constructive change. You may also start noticing where you are carrying responsibilities that are not truly yours, while neglecting responsibilities that are. Overcommitting to others while undercommitting to your own growth creates imbalance and resentment over time. Another form of warning is when your body signals stress through fatigue, tension, or disrupted sleep. These are not just physical issues. They are often connected to emotional strain, unresolved pressure, or chronic overload. You may also recognize that some relationships reinforce old versions of yourself that no longer fit who you are becoming. While connection is important, growth sometimes requires redefining boundaries and expectations. Another awareness is that comfort zones shrink if they are never challenged. What once felt manageable can begin to feel confining when growth is postponed. This discomfort is not meant to punish you, but to push you toward expansion. You may also realize that self-doubt becomes louder when action is delayed. Confidence grows through experience, not through waiting for perfect certainty. Another serious warning is when you start losing interest in goals that once mattered because progress feels slow. Giving up quietly can feel easier than facing frustration, but it often leads to long-term regret. You may also notice that your energy improves when you take small steps toward change, even if those steps feel uncomfortable. This is often a sign that action, not avoidance, is what restores motivation. Another shift is recognizing that discipline is not about harsh control, but about creating systems that reduce the need for constant decision-making. Without structure, willpower is overused and easily exhausted. You may also become aware that growth requires choosing priorities over preferences. What feels good now is not always what serves you best long-term. Another important realization is that many changes can be gradual and do not require dramatic disruption. Small, consistent adjustments often produce stronger results than extreme short-term efforts. You may also notice that fear of judgment plays a larger role in your decisions than you previously admitted. Worrying about how others will react can delay actions that are necessary for your own well-being. Another warning is when you feel disconnected from your own goals and values because daily routines have become automatic. Without reflection, direction slowly fades. You may also recognize that ignoring internal signals often leads to louder external consequences later. Addressing issues early usually requires less effort than fixing them after they escalate. Another serious sign is when you stop believing that change is possible. Hopelessness can feel protective, but it blocks creativity and effort. You may also notice that taking responsibility feels heavy at first, but becomes empowering over time. Responsibility gives you influence over outcomes. Another realization is that growth often requires letting go of identities that once felt safe. Moving forward sometimes means releasing familiar roles, expectations, or narratives about yourself. You may also see that discipline in one area often improves confidence in others. Small wins build momentum across different aspects of life. Another warning is when procrastination becomes a habit rather than an occasional delay. Habitual avoidance shapes identity and future options. You may also recognize that clarity comes from engagement, not from endless thinking. Action provides feedback that reflection alone cannot. Another important shift is understanding that support is available, but it often appears after you begin moving, not before. You may also realize that building a better future requires tolerating short-term discomfort for long-term benefit. Another serious moment is recognizing that no one else can make these changes for you. Guidance can help, but action must come from you. You may also notice that self-respect grows when you keep promises to yourself, even small ones. Another realization is that habits shape identity more than intentions do. You may also understand that growth requires honesty about what is working and what is not. Another warning is when you stop challenging yourself and settle into routine without reflection. You may also recognize that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite it. Another shift is realizing that stability is built, not given. You may also notice that direction becomes clearer once you commit to movement instead of waiting for certainty. As this second part settles, understand this. The warning is not about punishment or loss. It is about responsibility, timing, and awareness. It is a reminder that your future is being shaped by the habits, decisions, and priorities you choose right now. You still have room to adjust your direction, to strengthen your discipline, and to align your actions with what you truly want to build. This moment is not about pressure, it is about opportunity. The opportunity to respond while change is still within your control, and growth is still accessible through intentional, steady effort. As you continue to reflect on this moment of awareness, you may begin to understand that true change rarely begins with dramatic action. It begins with honest evaluation. You start asking yourself where your energy is going, what habits are shaping your days, and whether your current direction actually supports the future you say you want. This kind of evaluation is not about judgment. It is about clarity, and clarity is what makes improvement possible. You may also notice that resistance often appears right before growth. When you feel the strongest urge to stay comfortable, to delay, or to distract yourself, that is often the exact point where progress is closest. This resistance is not proof that you should stop. It is usually a signal that you are approaching a meaningful shift that challenges old patterns. Another important realization is that consistency matters more than intensity. Short bursts of motivation may feel powerful, but they do not replace steady, repeated effort. Sustainable change comes from small actions done regularly, even when motivation is low. This is how habits are built and how identity begins to shift. You may also start noticing how your environment influences your behavior. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, and the spaces you occupy all shape your mindset. If your surroundings constantly pull you toward distraction or negativity, growth becomes harder. Adjusting your environment is often one of the simplest and most effective ways to support better decisions. As awareness deepens, you may also recognize that self-discipline is closely connected to self-respect. When you treat your goals as important, you naturally protect time and energy for them. When you see your future as valuable, you become less willing to waste effort on habits that offer only short-term comfort. You may also notice that emotional triggers become clearer. Situations that lead to impulsive decisions or avoidance begin to stand out. Recognizing these triggers allows you to plan healthier responses instead of reacting automatically. This awareness gives you back control over behavior. Another shift is how you interpret failure. Instead of seeing it as proof that you are incapable, you begin to see it as feedback. You adjust strategies, learn from mistakes, and continue forward. This learning mindset prevents one setback from becoming a stopping point. You may also find that your attention span improves when you commit to reducing unnecessary distractions. Fewer interruptions allow deeper focus, which leads to better performance and greater satisfaction with your efforts. As you become more intentional, you may also notice that your goals become more realistic and structured. You break large ambitions into smaller, manageable steps. This planning makes progress measurable and less overwhelming. Another important development is how you handle internal conflict. When part of you wants comfort and another part wants growth, you begin listening to both instead of ignoring one. You acknowledge the discomfort while still choosing actions that support long-term well-being. You may also recognize that many fears lose strength once you take the first step. Anticipation often feels worse than the reality of trying. Action provides information that fear cannot. As discipline grows, you may also experience increased confidence in your ability to manage responsibilities. You trust yourself to handle what you commit to, which encourages you to take on challenges that once felt intimidating. You may also notice that your sense of purpose becomes more connected to contribution rather than only personal success. You think about how your growth can benefit others, not just yourself. This broader perspective adds meaning to effort. Another shift is how you experience time. Instead of feeling constantly rushed, you become more deliberate about how you spend your hours. This intentional use of time reduces stress and increases productivity. You may also find that your emotional reactions become less extreme. High highs and low lows begin to stabilize as routines and structure support emotional balance. This stability allows clearer thinking. As your internal leadership strengthens, you may also become more proactive. You anticipate challenges and prepare for them instead of waiting to react. This preparation reduces crisis-driven decision-making. You may also recognize that building confidence requires keeping promises to yourself. Each small commitment you honor strengthens trust in your own reliability. Over time, this trust becomes the foundation of self-esteem. Another important realization is that growth does not always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels repetitive, slow, and ordinary. But these ordinary days are what build extraordinary stability. You may also notice that your tolerance for chaos decreases. You prefer clarity, planning, and structure because they support focus and emotional health. This preference reflects maturity. As your standards rise, you may also become more selective about what you allow into your life. You choose relationships, habits, and commitments that support growth rather than undermine it. You may also recognize that improvement in one area often strengthens others. Better sleep improves focus. Better focus improves performance. Better performance improves confidence. Growth compounds across systems. Another shift is how you treat setbacks. You do not dramatize them or let them define your identity. You treat them as part of the process and continue forward. You may also notice that your emotional resilience increases. You handle disappointment with less collapse and recover more quickly. This resilience protects long-term motivation. As awareness grows, you may also become more honest about what you truly want. You stop chasing goals that do not align with your values. This alignment brings peace even when work is challenging. You may also recognize that change often requires letting go of excuses that once felt reasonable. When responsibility increases, excuses lose their usefulness. Another important development is how you handle pressure to conform. You become more comfortable choosing what is right for you, even if others do not understand. This independence strengthens confidence. You may also notice that your sense of urgency becomes healthier. You take action without panic. You move with purpose rather than pressure. As your habits stabilize, you may also experience increased mental clarity. Fewer decisions, better routines, and stronger focus free mental space for creativity and problem-solving. You may also recognize that discipline protects motivation. When structure is in place, you do not rely solely on feelings to keep moving. Another shift is how you respond to uncertainty. You accept that not everything can be predicted, but you trust your ability to adapt. You may also find that your goals become more long-term. You plan not just for the next step, but for sustained progress. As your confidence grows, you may also become more willing to invest effort without immediate reward. You trust that work done now will benefit you later. You may also recognize that personal growth often requires saying no to good options in order to protect great ones. Another important development is how you manage emotional fatigue. You schedule rest and recovery intentionally rather than waiting until exhaustion forces you to stop. You may also notice that your self-talk becomes more constructive. You encourage effort instead of criticizing imperfection. As your internal structure strengthens, you may also feel more capable of handling change. Adaptation becomes less threatening. You may also recognize that true stability comes from habits and mindset, not from perfect circumstances. Another shift is understanding that you do not need to fix everything at once. Focused improvement in key areas can transform overall well-being. You may also notice that your sense of direction becomes clearer when distractions decrease. As your confidence in your own growth strengthens, you may also become more patient with the process. You stop rushing milestones and focus on mastery. You may also realize that growth is not about becoming someone else, but about becoming more aligned with your best potential. As this third part settles, understand this. The warning you were given is not about fear, but about readiness. It is about recognizing that you are capable of more, and that your current choices are powerful enough to either support that potential or delay it. What is unfolding now is a call to consistency, discipline, and honest self-leadership. You are not being asked to change everything overnight. You are being asked to begin taking responsibility for the direction of your life with steady, intentional steps that compound over time into lasting stability and meaningful progress.